When you watch a movie, you are seeing only what is on the screen. You may take note of the actors' names and comment on the special effects, but you are only seeing a tiny portion of the creation of the movie. If you take a peek behind the scenes, you'll see directors and producers, set designers, costume designers, lighting technicians, and the list goes on and on. Thousands of people are involved in the making of a single movie, but we tend to forget that because we only see a few of them on the screen. Similarly, when you look at your life, you see it only from your perspective. You see what happens, but not necessarily how things happen. That's because God is working behind the scenes, directing your life where He wants it to go. Just as a movie would be incredibly disappointing without those working behind the scenes, our lives would amount to nothing if we didn't have God working behind the scenes to piece every part of our lives together. When we look at the genealogy of Jesus, we can clearly see how God worked behind the scenes to build the family of Jesus from Adam and Eve to Mary and Joseph. For example, let's take a look at the story of Rahab. Rahab was a prostitute living in Jericho when Israelite spies were sent into the land. They were staying at Rahab's home when the king of Jericho sent her a message telling her to hand over the spies. The king sent men to collect them, but Rahab told them that they were long gone. She said they had been there but had since left, and she didn't know where they went. But Rahab knew exactly where the spies were because she had hidden them on her roof. When their pursuers were gone, Rahab approached the spies and acknowledged God's great power. She had heard of the things God had done for the Israelites, and she was amazed. She knew that God was going to grant Jericho to the Israelites, so she asked the spies to remember her when that time came and to spare her and her family. They promised to do so, and Rahab helped them escape the city without the king's notice. When the Israelites took over Jericho, the spies remembered their promise, and Rahab and her family were spared. You may be wondering why this story is so significant. Well, part of the reason is that Rahab was the mother of Boaz, which brings us to another story, that of Ruth. Ruth was the daughter-in-law of a woman named Naomi. Naomi had a husband and 2 sons, but over time, each one of them died. Naomi then decided to move back to her hometown of Bethlehem. She encouraged her 2 daughters-in-law to return to their mother's homes, but Ruth refused to leave Naomi. She said to her, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." With that, Ruth and Naomi set off for Bethlehem. When they arrived, Naomi instructed Ruth to collect the leftover grain from a field. She did so, and the owner of the field took notice of her and showed her kindness. When Ruth told Naomi, Naomi informed her that the man was a guardian redeemer of their family, which meant that he was responsible for taking care of them in difficult situations. So, when Naomi decided it was time for Ruth to make her own home, she instructed her to approach the owner of the field. He informed Ruth that he would be willing to take care of her, but there was another family member who was first in line to be their guardian redeemer. As it happened, that family member did not want the responsibility, and so Ruth married the field owner and he took care of her. What was the point of going through that story? Well, the field owner who married Ruth was none other than Boaz, the son of Rahab. Let's take a closer look at this chain of events to see how God was working behind the scenes. Firstly, God guided the Israelite spies to Rahab's home so that they would be there when the king's men came looking for them. Secondly, God spoke to Rahab through His actions, which encouraged her to hide the spies. Thirdly, she had somewhere to hide them where the king's men wouldn't find them. And then God gave her the wisdom to request safety and help the spies escape. Because of all these events, Rahab and her family were saved from the death and destruction of Jericho. But the chain of events doesn't stop there. Rahab was saved, so she was able to have a child who ended up living in Bethlehem. God encouraged Ruth to follow Naomi to Bethlehem, even though it would have been easier for her to remain in Moab. Then God led Ruth to Boaz's field and guided Boaz to take notice of her. He gave Boaz a kindly nature so that Ruth would be willing to approach him to be her kinsman redeemer. And he guided the first kinsman redeemer to reject the position so that Boaz could marry Ruth himself. Ruth's story ends with the birth of her son Obed, who became the father of Jesse, who was the father of David. And way down the line came Jesus. We could begin this whole process all over again with Jesse and David, but I think you get the point. Everything that happened in each of these people's lives led them exactly where God wanted them. If Ruth's husband had never died, she wouldn't have had Obed, and Jesus would never have been born from that line. The same thing goes for Rahab if she hadn't had the courage and wisdom to hide the spies from the king and save her own life. So, what does this mean for you and I? Our lives consist of a series of moments and events orchestrated by God, which means that when bad things happen, we know that they happen for a reason. When life is difficult, we know that it is difficult for a reason. Maybe God is trying to strengthen your faith in Him, or maybe the difficulty you face is the only path to something great in the future. The part of our lives that we see and experience are not the whole story. Only God has the whole story, and He fits every piece of the puzzle together even when we don't know where it goes or even what the final picture will be. This means that we must live with patience, faith, and hope. James chapter 5 verse 7 and 8 says, "Be patient, then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near." We will go through difficult seasons of life like the farmer who goes through a dry period, but we must have patience because we know that the rains are coming. God has a reason for everything we go through, and at the end of this life, we can look forward to an even greater one in heaven. Don't panic when you feel like your life is going in the wrong direction. Instead, take a deep breath and practice patience. Trust the Lord to guide you and to be with you in the good times and the bad. It can be hard to practice patience, but the more you do it, the better you will get. Remember that the bad times don't last forever, and that whatever you are going through, it is for a reason. We must also live with faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. We have to trust that His way is the best way, and we have to be willing to follow Him. To have faith is to know that everything will work out in the end, and even if you can't see the middle yet. To have faith is to confront the things that scare you because you know it will be worth it. Faith is knowing that God is right beside you every step of the way and that He will never leave you. As Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 says, "Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." We can't see where our lives are going or where they'll end up, but we can be confident that we are on the right track when we follow the Lord. As long as you are following where He leads, you have full assurance that you are living the life you were meant to live. And finally, we must live with hope. To live without hope is to live in despair. As Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 says, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Hope gives us a reason to keep living day after day, even when things are not going well. We should have hope in the future because we are guided by God's hand. Hope allows us to soar with the wind, while despair is the deepest drudgery. The Lord gives us hope for this life because He works behind the scenes and promises to work everything according to His will. He has also given us hope for the life to come through the death and resurrection of the Lord Jesus. Even when our life on earth seems to be dragging us down, we can always look forward to our future in heaven when God will guide us to our forever home. Day after day, we can live with the abundant hope that God provides, and we can run without growing weary. You and I can only see a tiny portion of our lives, but we can live with patience, faith, hope, and confidence because we know that God is working behind the scenes. We would be nothing on our own, but the good news is that we are never on our own. We can trust that everything we face in life is part of God's plan and that everything serves a purpose. We don't have to know the reason for everything God does. We simply have to trust that He has a reason and that He is in control. Just as God guided Rahab to safety when she hid the spies and when He guided Ruth to Boaz's field, so too will He guide you exactly where you were always meant to be. In good times and bad, God is always working. And even though you can't see it yet, He is creating a masterpiece.